I'm Hannah Koo. I am the Customer Relationship Manager at the Cyber Resilience Centre for London. It's lovely to see you here today. We have a lot to get through and this is a huge topic to cover, so we'll just get started right now. We are delighted to be joined by our Spotlight Cyber Essentials partner for the month, Forensic Control, who will introduce themselves shortly and speak to you about the threat landscape in London and what good cyber hygiene looks like. But first, I want to talk about the security of a device throughout its life cycle and the things you should consider when you are looking to get rid of your old equipment and buy a new. To start with, though, for those who do not know who we are, the Cyber Resilience Centre for London is owned by the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime and part of a network of 9 other centres across England and Wales. We offer free resources and affordable services to help small to medium-sized businesses and third sector organisations strengthen their resilience against cyber threats. All we want to do is help London's business community because we know how devastating it can be if you face a cyber attack, and we also know you might not have the money to invest in bespoke security solutions. But as long as you have strong foundations of resilience in place, you are significantly more protected from threats. So with that in mind, do scan the QR code on screen to receive our newsletter as well. And there'll be other chances to sign up to our newsletter at the end of this webinar. So after this webinar, I want you to look at your systems and consider what data you actually hold. It might be more than you think. So you might have customer data, supplier data, partner data, employee data, business data, and so much more. And where is this all stored? On a laptop, computer, phone, on the cloud, on a removable device such as hardware, USB, or maybe even a notepad. Whatever data you store and wherever you store it, it needs to be protected. So some examples of recent data breaches: WH Smith lost their staff data in March, and this could lead to further scam emails to manipulate their staff into falling victim to further fraud, which can then cause them to cause a greater cyber attack on the company in the future, or they themselves could be impacted. So they might fall victim to a bank scam, or they might lose money and things as a result of their data being lost. There is much talk on ChatGPT at the moment, and even they had a data breach due to a bug that exposed active users' first and last names, their email address, payment address, credit card type, and the last 4 digits of their credit card number and credit card expiration date. And these are for their paid members. And so it might be minimal data that was exposed, but it's still exposed to people that weren't supposed to have it in their hands. And Liverpool Hospital Trust had their data breach, has had a data breach as well, just because someone accidentally sent a file with names, addresses, national insurance numbers, and salaries of their staff to the wrong person. So it's not always a cyber attack that can cause a data breach. It can be accidental loss or careless handling of data. And under the General Data Protection Regulation, you must make sure that all personal data must be processed securely using appropriate technical and organisational measures. And one way of doing this is to maintain the security of your equipment throughout its life cycle. So also, the Information Commissioner's Office is the UK supervisory authority for the GDPR, and they have published guidance on what this means for you as a business. If you believe you have suffered a data breach, you must inform the ICO within 72 hours. They will then advise you on next steps to take, and you can also take a self-assessment to first determine if you need to submit a report to the ICO. And also remember to report a cyber attack and any instance of fraud to Action Fraud, as they are the national reporting body for the UK and there to help as well. So this month's topic is out with the old, in with the new, and how does everything I have just talked about apply in this context? Well, we have all got old devices we want to dispose of. So the latest phone is launched, or our laptop has slowed down because it's an older model. The device is no longer supported by crucial updates that provide security fixes, or a member of staff leaves, or other possible reasons. But whatever your reason for disposing of old equipment, you must consider the information that is stored on it, as this cannot end up in outside hands, as this would be classed as a data breach. You would also not want to expose your business intellectual property to a competitor. It would be rather embarrassing if they launched your secret products before you because they brought a laptop with all your secrets on it. Deleting of files is simply not enough, as these can be easily recovered by criminals with specialist tools. You need to completely wipe and reset the device to its factory default settings to make sure no residue data is left on it. To do this, to do this, there are certain steps you can take. We have step-by-step guides to help you. But do this even if you are planning to give this device to a third-party company to destroy permanently, as they should not have access to your data either. Once the device is wiped, make sure it does not connect to the internet, as it is no longer secure. And then depending on the type of data you store, and if it has been stored on the device itself and not in the cloud, it would be safer to destroy the device completely to be certain nothing is leaked. Professional companies often break the equipment into 6mm pieces to make sure nothing can be pieced back together and recovered. And then remember to move any removable media, such as SIM cards, memory cards, hard drives, or other data storage methods. Did you know you can unscrew the back of the device and take out the hard drive and then destroy that separately? So all these are there to be considered and making sure that wherever your data is stored, it is fully destructed and destroyed properly. And then when getting a new device, make sure you are buying from a reputable source. Scammers like to list high-value products on sites like eBay and Amazon at good value prices to lure you into making a purchase, but often you make a payment but never receive the product, or you get a bad quality product. So always do your research on the seller beforehand and pay using a third-party payment system like PayPal, Apple Pay, or Google Pay, just to protect your credit card details and have added protection from fraud, or even use a credit card as well. If the product is dispatched by a courier, make sure to have tracked delivery and the parcel can be signed for by a named individual. This is to make sure that it has been properly delivered safely. Nowadays, we know that some couriers leave parcels on the doorstep, which is risky. So if you have a product like a laptop or phone, there is a risk it could be stolen from your doorstep. Have an onboarding policy. It is much easier to set up your device with security in mind from the start. You can make sure that you have your updates to install automatically and that you have antivirus installed or the built-in one enabled and your firewall switched on, and that you have separate admin user profiles and standard user profiles to separate your tasks and make sure that all those additional tasks are separated and that your device is secure should a criminal gain access to a standard user account. Avoid connecting to the internet at this early stage, as your device is not yet immune from threat. It's a bit like if you have a new baby or a pet, you have to take extra precautions to protect their health during the early stages of their life. And the same principle kind of applies to your new brand new device. And then finally, remember to keep the manual of all your devices so you know how to reset it to its default settings when you have to actually destroy the device and dispose of your tech at its final stages. And then when you are ready to issue the device to a member of staff, maintain an asset register so you know exactly where your equipment is at all times. This will help you to keep track of your data, especially when an employee leaves, so you can make sure to get your equipment back and the data that is stored on it. That's all from me from this short section, but I will now pass you on to Forensic Control, who will provide you with further information on how to keep your devices safe. So Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Really great presentation. So we're going to go through a few slides now. It won't take very long, and I'll try and keep it as non-technical as possible. The agenda for this is quite straightforward. I'll introduce myself and our company. I'll talk briefly around the cyber threats that London in particular faces. And similar to Hannah, I will look at the old way of cybersecurity and the new way, but taking a slightly different perspective. I'll be looking to give you some starting tips, some easy starting tips of how you can today improve your cybersecurity. We'll then look briefly at the Cyber Essentials scheme, which is a government-backed scheme to provide baseline cybersecurity in an affordable and achievable way. And then I'll take any questions at the end if there happen to be any. So Forensic Control, we were formed in 2008, quite a while ago. We started off purely as a computer forensic investigation company, which comes from my background as a forensic examiner at the High Tech Crime Unit at Scotland Yard for the Met Police. It's very exciting stuff. I left there, set up Forensic Control, and we did corporate investigations, and we still do those as well. But we moved to the proactive side of cybersecurity. So we weren't looking just at what happened after a data incident. We were looking how to prevent these data incidents from happening in the first place. And one of the pluses of looking into so many investigations about data breaches is that you have a pretty good idea of what you need to do to prevent them going forward. So I think that's quite a good fit for us. So we primarily offer Cyber Essentials and its advanced older brother, Cyber Essentials Plus, and some other cybersecurity services to organisations of all shapes and sizes, from one-person companies up to government departments. And we're based in the city, just off Fleet Street, in a nice old building, which makes the change from all the corporate buildings which are by us. And there's some of our clients on the slide there that we work for. Okay, so to understand the threat that London in particular faces, it's quite unique, and that we have the advantage, and perhaps disadvantage here, of speaking the world's global language, English. And we're also a financial hub, a legal hub, not only for Europe, but for the world in many cases. So this makes London a unique and profitable place for organisations or criminal organisations and fraudsters to come and attack. We did some research recently, which came out with the help of the London Cyber Resilience Centre about computer honeypots and how many attacks they received. And a honeypot is a computer which is exposed to the internet and has some of its defences taken away. And it's used by researchers and security professionals to see what type of attacks and how frequent and how intense attacks will be if nothing is done to a computer. There's some figures there over the course of 28 days in January. The devices were attacked tens of millions of times. And you think, well, how is that possible? It's possible because these are completely automated attacks. And they probably cost the attacker nothing to do. So they got very low overheads involved. It costs them nothing because they're probably hacking into someone else's computer and using that resources of that computer, the power and its connection, and they've taken over it. They're using it itself. And that puts them one step away from being caught as well, because they are using someone else's computer. So these attacks will come from thousands of compromised computers across the world. They cost the attacker absolutely nothing. They're automated and they can just fire out thousands of attacks a minute. And the attacks will be looking at things where computers have vulnerabilities, known vulnerabilities. And those known vulnerabilities might come from software which is old and not updated, and operating systems like Windows XP or Windows 7, which are absolutely riddled with breaches and holes and security gaps at the moment. And once they find that, then they will launch an attack and take over that computer, and they will steal any information which they may find on there. They may use it to basis of phishing campaigns, where they take on somebody else's identity and try and involve themselves in financial transactions. And you may have seen of these before, where they will send a new invoice with their own bank account details. So a payment will be made to the fraudster rather than who you think you're making the payment to. So that's understanding the threat landscape, which is, don't want to say it's too scary, but it's out there and it's real, and it needs to be taken with some degree of, seriousness. So on the theme of the talk, the old way of cybersecurity, which may be the current way for a lot of people, and that actually is based on a lot of the work that we've been doing with clients. what we try and do as a cybersecurity company is demystify cybersecurity, democratize it. So the old way is thinking that cybersecurity is a scary, complex thing, that it's the providence of geeks in basements, and it's particularly hard. Well, we're here to tell you that it absolutely isn't that way. And we don't want to use jargon. We don't like people who do try to use jargon and trying to cloud the matters, because it really is quite straightforward. Of course, you could go to the X level with a depth of protection, but for most circumstances, simple procedures can greatly enhance your security level. Another thing that people often find, that we often find with people, is that they assume devices and software are safe or comes with security tools built in and they're configured correctly. And this goes back to one of Hannah's previous points about you have to sort of kind of bed in with new devices and set them up to be secure before you can consider them secure and before you put your valuable data on them. Previously, people would quite often download software and apps from untrusted sources. For Android phones, for example, you can navigate or get around the official Google App Store and go to untrusted app stores and download apps. In the olden days, you could use peer-to-peer like FileDonkey or various places where software would be available to download, which was illegal, basically, because it didn't have any license. And that would have become riddled with security issues. Assuming that you can press update later or delay or postpone an update to your computer. You can a certain number of times, but after a while, you really need to sit back and wait for your computer to update and restart, because it's doing that because there's a security issue which has been found, and the update process will patch or fix that security hold. And at the bottom there, usage of really simple passwords. And these could be broken very easily by a method called brute forcing. And brute forcing is getting a computer to automate its attacks. So it can attack a password many thousands of times a minute, and it will go through the top 100 most common passwords and then use combinations of those. And it can quite quickly break such a simple password, which is why the use of two-factor authentication, where you get an app with a one-time access code on your phone, or you get sent an SMS message with an access code, really does increase the resilience of your accounts. The newer way of cybersecurity, excuse me, is understanding the basics of cybersecurity and try to ignore the common misconceptions about security, that it's difficult, that it's complicated, that it's expensive, that you don't need to think about it. So you need to understand what your need is. What is your risk profile? What devices do you have? Are you going to be specifically under attack? What type of data do you deal with? This is a lot of that's to do with procedures and policies, but also technical controls on your computers. To use a, perhaps do think of going for a baseline cybersecurity standard like Cyber Essentials, and invest in training. An investment might just be time, because there's a lot of training out there which is available for free, and resources. The National Cybersecurity Centre, which is the UK's government arm for managing our cybersecurity as a country, has a lot of resources for individuals, for smaller micro businesses, and for larger businesses, including training programs. So that would definitely be worth looking up. And here are some very simple steps that I recommend all organizations and even individuals take to secure their digital assets and data. Assessing your risk. You can't secure what you don't know that you have. So that goes to the hardware, such as laptops and mobile phones and tablets, and also the type of data that you have. Try and put a record down of what you have, where it's stored, who has access to it, what type of access do they have, do they need that access? That would be a really good starting point to know, like, right, what do we have? Once you know what you have, you can apply the particular security controls to keep it safe. Back on education. As I just said, there are free online courses from the National Cybersecurity Centre. Education is really important for users because it is always, or more often than not, it's the user which creates issues in maybe clicking on emails which they shouldn't do, or downloading files, and just informing people of the potential risks around security. And again, we're coming back to, once you've made this journey to listing what assets you have, your devices, your data, your internal training, is that therefore you want to go and maybe test yourself against a baseline security standard such as Cyber Essentials. I'll try to scroll on to the next slide. So Cyber Essentials, which we'll talk a little bit about now, it covers 5 basic areas. The firewall, which is it's a device. It's either a piece of hardware like your Wi-Fi router, or it might be a piece of software on your computer, and that controls the internet connections in and out of your device or your office network, for example. Now that has to be set up correctly and not disabled. We then look at secure configuration of devices. Have they been set up to update automatically? Have you removed old or unwanted software, which you may not know you have, and which may cause a security issue? User access control. User access control is about, do people have access only to the data that they need access to? For example, in an organization, there's no need for everybody to have access to the finance department data or the HR data. You need to control which data people have access to minimize the internal risk to that data. Patch management is to do with updating your software, and patches are, I said, don't involve jargon, but patch is a piece of jargon, and that just means a patch is like an elastoplast on something which isn't working or needs updating. So you patch software, you update it. All software needs to be regularly updated. A lot of software will automatically update, and operating systems, but not all of it. So you need a system where you are checking for updates on a regular basis. Finally, Cyber Essentials looks at malware protection. This is protect against viruses and other malicious software which you may get sent as an attachment to an email, or maybe download accidentally from a website. So there's 2 parts to Cyber Essentials. This is, just to go over it again, it's the government approved cybersecurity certification for businesses in the UK, and it's designed to be achievable at a low cost. So for most people, it doesn't involve buying extra equipment or buying extra software, unless your equipment is really old and it needs updating and it can't take the latest software. Of course, there's some consultancy that companies you would usually charge to take you through Cyber Essentials, but that's usually quite reasonable, considering the benefits that it gives you in terms of security. There's 2 levels: the Cyber Essentials, which is a list of questions which you answer, and then a body such as ourselves, Forensic Control, would then mark against the standard. And then there's Cyber Essentials Plus, which goes on to check what you've said you actually do have. So it's like an audit, an assessment of your network and your devices. And just there's some more benefits of what Cyber Essentials can do. It will prevent the vast majority of automated attacks. So it's the type of automated attacks that we covered earlier on about honeypots. it will almost certainly stop the vast majority of those. What it won't stop is a particularly well-crafted attack, which is specifically set out to get a particular person or a particular organization. Then that would need a bit more security than Cyber Essentials, but very few people are targets of such targeted attacks. That's about it from the presentation on out with the old and in with the new, and how Cyber Essentials would be a good way to start your cyber security journey. So if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Thank you, Jonathan. While we're waiting for questions, I'll move on to this last slide, where we've also got the Forensic Control website as well, if you want to check them out as well as our website and any contact details that you might need to get in contact with us. But I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. More information, as I say, can be found on our websites and social media channels. And we also have step-by-step guides for the information that we have provided today for some of the security best practices that we have talked about. And you can find some further information on them there. We are always looking for new ways of helping businesses and would welcome your feedback. So if you could take the time to complete the short survey here as well by scanning the QR code whilst it's fresh in your mind, that would be appreciated. Thank you again for joining us during your lunchtime, and thank you to Jonathan from Forensic Control for joining us today as well and providing that really insightful piece. And yeah. If you have any further questions, though, then do get in touch with us personally as well through our websites and email addresses that we've provided in the slides. And we will send a copy in PDF as well over to you.